anybody's counting the ball as it drops.
Kind of like in church, it gets quiet.
I
as
know,
you get close to
exactly.
the minister
Before the
starts to
preacher
speak.
starts.
That's right. Then it gets louder when the preacher starts. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Commissioner Caballero is on her way and will be here shortly. Anybody else missing? Where's
Tabby is
Tabby?
here, but
Yeah.
he,
Oh, okay. Commissioner Small is in the house somewhere. I'll entertain so, Mr. Coley, did you get that? No, thank you. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from October 20th.
So moved.
So moved.
second.
Second. Is there any discussion about the minutes, any corrections, modifications? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The first action today that we'll consider is Resolution 1467. Mr. Bolus.
Thank you, Commissioners. I would like to recognize Mark Walker, our Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, to present a resolution to revise the debt management policy. Mark?
Commissioners, good afternoon. We are proposing reviewed with the board's Audit and Finance Committee at their October 25th meeting. And so this resolution does come with a recommendation from Audit and Finance Committee for approval. And just a little bit of background, back in 2011, the Tennessee State Legislature adopted a new law that required all municipalities in the state to have a formal debt management policy. In response to that, the board in November of 2011 adopted a debt management policy for KUB, which basically reflected our longstanding debt management practices and objectives for that. And there were probably some key points in the legislation that needed to be addressed in the policy. The policy does call for it to be reviewed on an annual basis. And so we have done that each year. We did have an amendment back in 2012, but we have had no changes to the policy over the last 10 years. However, during this year's review, we did identify several areas that needed to be modified for various reasons, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But as I previously mentioned, we did discuss it with the Audit and Finance Committee, and the committee did adopt a resolution at their October 25th meeting recommending full board approval of that. So what are we proposing to change? First of all, to add the fiber division to the policy and recognize that it does have the ability under law to issue its own debt if needed. There was also a change in state law this year, actually a new state law regarding capital leasing, that we needed to reflect the citation of that law in the policy and also upgrade some of our language related to that. Although it's not specifically mentioned in the policy, the big thing about the law was now that KUB or any municipality that enters into a lease, a capital lease that has an economic value in excess of $100,000, that lease needs to be approved by the state comptroller's office before we can sign it. For us, not really that big of a deal. We do have some leases that currently that would exceed that limit, but that's just basically what the new law is from the comptroller on that. Interdivisional loans. As you'll recall, the board has approved, in accordance with law, loans from the electric division to the fiber division to help fund startup operations on that. So we wanted to recognize the use of interdivisional loans in our policy. I do want to mention that currently under law, it would only be electric being able to loan money to the fiber division. If we had the thought of maybe the water division should help and grant a loan to the wastewater division, that is not currently permitted under law. So just to clarify that. And then we added some flexibility into the policy related to the threshold of savings for bond refinancings. And this was really driven by what happened last year. Currently, the policy says that KUB can issue or have a refinancing, issue refunding bonds if the net, if the debt service savings or the net present value of the debt service savings is 3% or greater of the refunded principal. You may recall this past spring when we were doing a refinancing, what we initially brought to the board for your approval showed savings well above that 3% threshold. But as the market changed over the ensuing weeks, when we actually got to the sale date, 2 of the series of the bonds came back slightly under the 3% threshold. And it just got us thinking, you know, why we need to have some flexibility in that regard. In that case, that day, I reached out to Commissioner Hamilton and we discussed it because the bonds had already been bid on and we have to award them within a certain period of time. So we made the decision that it was in the best interest of KUB and its customers to go ahead and proceed with the sale. In other words, are you really going to walk away from millions of dollars of savings just because you're slightly below that 3% threshold? So one of the changes is to give flexibility in that regard. And then finally, the other, I guess, major change, or not major change, but change to the policy is on a couple of our board metrics, our debt metrics that we have reflected in the policy. Given our direction to actually reduce our debt funding levels over time, we felt that some of those metrics needed to be updated. So I have a couple of slides on that, and first starting with the metric related to long-term debt to capitalization. And basically what this measures is how much of your utility system is funded with debt. So when the policy was adopted back in 2011, those levels, and these are maximum allowable levels, so this is setting the ceiling on how much a system can be funded by debt. They were 60% for electric, gas, and water, and 70% for wastewater. Wastewater was higher because we were already over the 60% threshold at that time because of all the debt that we sold to help fund capital under the federal consent decree. But again, given our direction and where we're headed over the next 10 years, you know, we felt that, you know, we needed to update those. It's been 10 years, and where we're looking at our forecast of debt funding ratios that we propose to lower the 60% for electric, gas, and water to 50%, and for wastewater lower it from 70% to 60%. Now, the far right column provides a little bit more perspective with respect to where are we right now in those debt funding ratios, and you can see it ranges. Electric's just under 40%, gas is really down at 23%, and we'll talk about that more here in just a moment. And water and wastewater are both below those threshold levels. Now you might say, well, water and wastewater, that's pretty close, you know, 46 to 50, 55 to 60. How are you thinking, is that too close for comfort? Could it go the other way? So I did want to, I guess, remind you or share with you what our long-term debt funding forecast looks like. And you see those proposed maximum allowable levels in green on the top of the table. And then you see basically what our forecast is for the next 10 years on that. So starting with water, which, because that was close at 50 to 46%, you can see that water is anticipated to trend down over time and actually reach close to 30% by 2032. And the same with wastewater. It was sort of close, 60 to 55. Again, you can see how that is projected to decline over time as well. So, and then, yes, sir.
I want to make sure I understand. This is calculated, the amount of debt is the numerator and the denominator is the asset value, the value of the total assets in the division.
The denominator is like the total capitalization for a division. So long-term debt is part of the denominator, and you add to that off the balance sheet what used to be called accumulated or retained earnings. It now has a different name for it, like net position. But you add those two components together, and basically it represents how are your utility system assets and service funded? Good question. On the gas division, you can see that we are driving that down, and that's part of our long-term initiative to minimize long-term liabilities for the gas division, and we've talked about that before. The electric division, it is going to rise up from its current level over the next 3 to 4 years, And that's because we're issuing more debt than we typically would for the electric division to help fund the build-out of the fiber network for the electric system. Once that is completed, the debt issues will be reduced. In some years, we're projecting to have no electric debt issues, and you can see that that debt ratio will decline over time to about the mid 30% range. So just didn't want you all to have any concern thinking that, well, should we actually move those down when we're that close currently? They're projected to decrease
And
significantly
also,
over
the board
time.
can change the debt ceiling if it
Sure.
if it needs
We
to.
could always come back and modify the policy at any time if needed. Yes, sir. And then one other metric that we are proposing to change in the policy, there is a minimum level of debt that has to be repaid over the next 10 years. And that's to help ensure that we're not loading debt on the back end. And that's something that really is frowned upon by the state. Back in the early days of the consent decree, when we were balancing out all the wastewater debt, we did do some backloaded maturities. But in total, we felt it was important to have in the policy a certain percentage that needs to be repaid in the next 10 years. So we initially set those levels back in 2011 at 30% for electric, gas, and water, and 20% for wastewater. The change we're proposing is to raise wastewater to 30%. And again, the far right column, you can see what the current levels are as of the end of last fiscal year for that. And gas, you can see, is 73%. For all of those, electric will probably get a little bit lower over the next 3 to 4 years and then begin to increase. The other three systems, projections are that they're all going to increase over time. And eventually gas may come close to the 100% level as time goes on. So that's a summary of our proposed changes to the policy. Again, just to state that it does come with a recommendation from the board's Audit and Finance Committee for approval.
Okay, Resolution 1467 is before us for consideration. It does not need, it is in the form of a motion, so it doesn't need a second because it comes from the committee. Ordinarily, under Roberts, we would get a motion and then have discussion, but that's not our usual policy. Do we have any, or practice rather, do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I will entertain, I will ask Mr. Coley to call the roll.
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero.
Aye.
Commissioner Feinbaum.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Resolution 1467 is passed.
I neglected to ask if there were any people from the public signed up to speak. Okay, that's my mistake. We might have had to call the roll again if somebody had wanted to speak. Okay, Resolution 1468.
Yes, Commissioners, I'd like to introduce Chris Hood, our Director of Finance, to now present to you a consideration for resolution to go to City Council for approval of our auditor. Thank you, Chris.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I bring you a recommendation from the Board's Audit and Finance Committee. This is a request to the full Board to select Coulter & Justice as auditor for Knoxville Utilities Board for audits for the 2023 and 2024 calendar year. Back in the spring, we had talked with Coulter & Justice at the request of the Audit and Finance Committee to see if they would be interested in submitting a proposal to KUB for additional audits. Coulter has served as KUB's auditors for the last 8 years. The Board's Audit and Finance Committee felt that it would be of value to KUB to ask them for an additional proposal based upon the staffing that they had been able to consistently put on KUB's engagements. We feel like they've constantly had top-notch staff. They've rotated those staff. They've rotated their partners. We've had 4 audit partners in the last 8 years. So constantly new eyes on the engagement. They've been critical in helping us through a number of GASB pronouncements, that's Government Accounting Standards Boards, instituting those, as well as the Fiber Division. Obviously, we launched Fiber Division this year. Last year, we went through a number of steps in order to get Fiber Division set up from a financial perspective, and Coulter & Justice was very incremental in assisting with a number of means on that. So we really feel like that Coulter has put forth a proposal which the committee feels comfortable recommending as a good value for KUB, and we think there's value in continuing this relationship from the committee's perspective. So before we look at the actual proposal and the numbers, a couple of big things have changed on KUB's audit since we last got a proposal from Coulter and Justice for audit services. Biggest of which is we've got a whole new division. That means a whole new set of audited financial statements. This past year, I would say those were pretty minimal. I mean, we were very much in startup phase. When you don't have customers, you don't have revenue, audit's a little bit easier than it is the second year. So a lot's changing this year. We've got $70 million worth of assets going in to help our fiber customers. We've got all new inventories that support those broadband customers. And we've also got a new billing system. KUB bills its 4 utilities out of our current financial management system. The fiber system bills separately. It's an entirely different system to audit. So there's quite a bit of change when we added our fiber division as far as scope of what we are asking Coulter and Justice to look at. So that will be reflected in their pricing. Another big thing is our OPEB plan, which is our other post-employment benefit plan, has been closed since 1999. This past year, we decided to do something different than most employers were doing. We actually added a benefit for our employees. And with that, we added a new health reimbursement program, which gave employees that were hired after 1999 the ability to have some dollars to pay for medical insurance and medical costs when they retire. So our OPEB plan went from being a closed plan, an audit that looked very similar every year, to an audit that was much more engaged and had a lot more disclosures, a lot more testing this year. So you'll see a difference in the cost. Really that lines up pretty closely with about the same amount of testing they do for our pension program. So you'll see that reflected in their new proposal. The other thing is inflation. Obviously, as much as we'd like to, we don't want to have to recognize that, but even our auditors cannot escape inflation. So you'll see increases for inflation in their pricing. All right, so what you got here before you is a little bit of history, 2020 through 2024. Historically, Coulter has really held our pricing very, very steady. I think part of it is they say that as they've done our audit over numerous years, their economy of scale of doing that has helped them to keep their costs in check. But they've really kept our prices very steady until last year, in which we had partial addition of fiber along with a big lease standard. So they had to go up on our what we call our big audit, or the annual financial audit on the top line. So you'll see this year in the 2023 proposed, each of the engagements do have inflation in them. But the main KB audit, you'll see an increase, and that is for the fiber division. If you look down, you'll also see the OPEB trust here. I mentioned it. It now lines up with the pension plan audit. And really, the only other change that's not inflationary is on project help, and it's the smallest number on the page. I would say that Coulter and Justice has been very kind to us over the years. $4,000 is what we paid 8 years ago. It's what we paid last year. So they have been kind to us on project help as a nonprofit organization. So a small change there, a little bit more than inflation for project help. But in all, I think as far as value for each of KUB's 5 audits, a total of $208,000 this year is a pretty good value.
So I absolutely think Coulter and Justice have done great work and appreciate their partnership. But I do get a little bit of heartburn when we have an auditor too long, and I think at the end of this engagement, it would have been a decade, right? 10 years,
Yes.
correct? And so what is our process moving forward from here in terms of RFP rebidding it out?
Yeah, so a couple things on that. One, the city and county and KUB, some of the larger entities, have started holding their auditors a little longer. For example, cities on their 10th year, counties on their 11th year. And part of it is just due to the size of the engagement. There aren't as many audit firms around as there used to be due to some consolidations, that type of thing. It generally takes a firm 2 years or so to really get up to speed on an entity as large as KUB. And we only got bigger. So there's value to us in keeping that. But with that being said, after this engagement, after the 2-year tenure's up, I think we would probably look elsewhere and do a full RFP for services for that audit.
Yeah, that was the direction of the Audit and Finance Committee, that this would be the final term with Culture and Justice, and we would go with a different firm
And we
beginning in
Based on our
2025.
bylaws, they're not eligible to bid on the new engagement, correct? Colton Justice.
I don't think there would be anything that would preclude them from bidding, but we would be notifying them going into it that they would not be selected regardless of what the bid was.
And Commissioner Small, I would say too that the fact that they are familiar with a startup, a utility starting up in the fiber division weighed heavily on our decision that we felt like a 2-year extension would be justified.
They represent 2 other clients that have started up fiber utilities. So part of what we leaned on was some of the things that we did in setting up part of our financials for KUBs. So that experience, we think, over the next couple of years will be very valuable.
Other questions or comments? 1468 comes to us as a motion, needing no second. Are there any members of the public who came to speak on this? Okay. Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero, Commissioner Feinbaum. Aye. Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Resolution 1468 is passed.
Thank you, Ms. Gabe.
Yep. Commissioners, each time this year, we usually give you an update on the winter projections and bills that are coming up this winter. So I'd like to invite Sherry Ottinger, our manager of rates, to give you that winter bill update and projection. Thank you, Sherry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It seems like it was just a few months ago that I was here and we talked about Natural Gas Purchasing Authority. It has in fact been a full year, and so Natural Gas Purchasing Authority and Price Risk Management Policy are 2 items that annually we always provide you with an update on and assure you that we are in compliance with those. And then as Gabe mentioned, we do also take the opportunity this time to talk about the projections for the upcoming winter. So the key takeaways for today are all on this one slide. So I'll just start right off the bat and say we are in compliance with both resolutions, the natural gas purchasing and also the natural gas price risk management policies. Additionally, you know that reliability of supply is our #1 concern. We rank that higher than price risk. We always want to make sure the gas shows up. And we have no gas supply or pipeline concerns, so we wanted to make sure you knew that. And then wholesale energy prices. We talked about this last year. Those have been in the news for, I think, at least 18 months. You've seen they are still up. And, of course, those prices do inform our bill projections, which is the last item that we'll talk about today. So, of course, with wholesale prices being up, our projections for winter bills this winter are also up. So we'll just start out with the compliance update. So Resolution 1447 is the resolution that the board approved last November. It, as well as all of its predecessor resolutions, had the main focus of differentiating which natural gas contracts need to come before the board for approval and which ones does the board want to delegate to staff. So there are essentially 3 types of contracts that we have. One is for the supply, the commodity itself. The other type of contract is transportation contract. So when we purchase that supply, we rent space on pipelines to move it to Knoxville. And then the third type is storage contracts. And so we do participate in 4 different locations. We have rights to storage fields for our natural gas. So the board has retained authority for contracts that exceed 6 years, and then for contracts which exceed certain limits which are listed there on the chart. Also, we do have an overall cap on transportation of 160,000 decatherms. Currently, we're just a little over 157,000. Our peak day that KUB has ever had was 140,000. So we're under that cap, but definitely like the assurance of having 157,000 in place. And then we do have a cap on storage. So the one exception to both the term, the volume, and that overall cap for purchased gas and for the capacity relates to East Tennessee Natural Gas. And that was what we brought to you a year ago. And I won't belabor that since it's not been that long since we talked about it. But on East Tennessee, on their existing capacity, occasionally another shipper will turn back their capacity. And when that happens, the pipeline will put that out for bid. And when they do that, sometimes the term for that bid period is very short. It could be, we need your bids by 14 days from now. So in that situation, we don't have the opportunity always to come before the board. So that is the exception we put in place. If there should, that situation should arise, Gabe or his designee would inform the Audit and Finance Committee that we intended to bid on that capacity, and that would be our path for informing you initially when we were under a time constraint. So we are in compliance. All of the contracting activities that we entered into this past year are in compliance with this resolution. And I always like to take this opportunity as well to tell you about our sale of excess capacity. During fiscal year 22, we were able to sell $230,000 worth of excess capacity. And that's important because those dollars automatically are returned back to our customers through the purchase gas adjustment. So this past spring and summer has been rather busy for us in gas supply. You see listed there, these are our main supply contracts, and the blue and the green indicate a change of some type. So just looking at the first three suppliers, BP, Conoco, and Shell. For all three of those, the contract we had provided for a 1-year extension. And we did activate that extension and just extend those. Those are our three main suppliers that we rely upon on a daily basis. And the volumes that you see on the chart where it says 8,000, 13,000, that really is up to 8,000. For any given month, we can choose to go with 0. And obviously, that changes from summer to winter, what we're purchasing. Then the next line is for NextEra. That is all in green, indicating that is a brand new contract. We already had a contract with NextEra on Tennessee Gas Pipeline. We also put one in place now on the Texas Eastern Pipeline. And then the NextEra contract on TGP was renewed. We increased the volume from 5,000 to 7,500. And then the last two changes, CNX and Intervest, those suppliers are located on East Tennessee Natural Gas Pipeline. They are one of a very small, there's a very small population of suppliers directly located on East Tennessee. And those two are located near our Saltville storage facility. So they are very important to us. And you can see in the column there, it says firm. So unlike the variable contracts, these we are required to take 3,000 decatherms a day every month from CNX and 2,000 every day from Intervest. So for our storage contracts, we did have some activity, and you can see, obviously, Bear Creek on Tennessee Gas Pipeline is by far our largest storage field. But again, Saltville is very strategic, very important to us because of its location. We did renew 2 contracts with Saltville, 2 of our 3 were up for renewal. And then the last one, Bobcat, is located on Tetco. Typically, our storage contracts will be 5 years duration. Bobcat was new to us a couple years ago, so we've taken some time just to assess it, its usefulness, and how we could use it. And so we did go ahead and extend it for another 3 years. And then our storage currently, heading into winter, we typically like to be 85 to 90% full on storage. Again, the exception to that is LNG, because LNG we inject only in the summer, we withdraw only in the winter. The other ones we can inject or withdraw on any given day. And so for that reason, we do like to leave a little bit of open space in those storage facilities for operational flexibility. So we are right on target with where we need to be for storage. And then lastly, our transportation portfolio. Again, these contracts are usually 5 to 6 years in duration. We did not have any changes there, but I did want to just go ahead and show the map. Again, most of our supply, you can see, comes from Tennessee Gas Pipeline, which is the red lines. So most of our supply is coming from west to east to Knoxville. That's the 83,000. And then occasionally we'll use the 4,000 coming up from the south. And then we have 15,000 on any given day coming from the east. The 54,000 that you see there is not available to us year-round. That is a winter-only contract, and it is tied in with that LNG facility, again, where we can only withdraw in the winter. So we've only purchased the transportation associated with it for the winter months also. So the other resolution that we need to provide you an update on is Resolution 1388, which governs our price risk management activities. So again, we are in compliance with that resolution. This chart probably looks very familiar to you. It's very similar to last year. We do provide monthly updates to the Price Risk Committee as well, so that there's a constant communication happening throughout the year. And then as far as our price certainty heading into winter, 16% of our winter supply is currently price locked. Sometimes we'll say price lock or we'll say hedged. And then 32% is already in storage, as you saw from the previous chart. That gives us 48% price certainty heading into the winter. And that 50-50 balance between market exposure and fixed price, that's very typical of where we are at this time of year. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about market prices, and again, that's the wholesale price that we deal with. And again, that's been in the news quite a bit. And so just to go back and revisit last winter a little bit, if you look on the chart, obviously, the past 5 years, we have had a lot of price certainty until we arrived at last year. And in September of 2021, the New York Mercantile Exchange, the NYMEX, and that's where gas futures are traded. It was indicating to us that natural gas prices were going to be $3.50 to $3.75 for the upcoming winter. And as we progressed, particularly through the latter part of October and November, we really started seeing that climb. And what you see on that chart, we see a lot of just a yo-yo up and down. November is that peak point that's over $6, and by January we had dropped back down to below $4. And in February we immediately went back up to $6, and then we went down and up and down. So when I look at this chart and I see that we are, where the NYMEX is right now is looking at $9 to $10 for this winter. Do I believe that will happen? I believe it could, but I certainly cannot predict it. I probably expect to see some more of that yo-yo activity, across the winter. But that price right now, that is our best indicator. That is the price that informs our winter bill projections. So we certainly hope that those prices do not come to bear, but that is our best indicator for now.
Before you go to the next slide, thank you. I understand the market price, but the KUB hedge means that we're not allowed to spend more than that, or that's our average, or what does it mean?
Yeah, so a KUB hedge, that's a price lock. That means that we have gone in and we have already locked the price on a portion of gas. And typically, our approach to that over the years has been dollar cost averaging. We don't try to be market timers. We don't say, oh, this price today is surely better than what it will be 3 months from now. So we typically every month will hedge just a little bit. We're now probably in more of a pattern of every other month, just because we pulled back a little bit on our price locks due to operational needs, and that's been the case for about 3 years. But yeah, that's what the hedge is, and so.
Sorry, you buy at a price.
Yes.
And then you're just hoping that it doesn't go lower than that.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And so that blue line also will change as we go forward on those projected, as we layer in additional purchases. So, yeah. Okay. So our winter bill projection for gas, we'll start with it. And I will say, these are winter bills. Most often when we're talking to you about bill comparisons to other utilities, we're looking at a 12-month perspective. And so for gas, you're used to seeing something more like $65 to $70. So when we're seeing 100 and 112 on this chart, just remember that is winter only. It's November to April. So of course for gas, those are the high months for gas bills. But we are projecting currently a 12% increase, a $12 increase as compared to last winter. That is all wholesale pricing. KUB has not had a rate increase on the gas division since October of 2019. So the blue part of the stacked bar there represents KUB, and you can see that's the same from year to year. And then on electric, again, this is using last winter, November to April for the average, so we're using 1,117 kilowatt hours. And for that projection, we're expecting approximately $9.50 increase, which is 7.6%. A portion of that is KUB. You all are aware of the rate increase that we had in April. And so that represents $3.72. And then the wholesale portion is $5.88. That is based, of course, TVA is our only supplier. That is based on TVA's most recent fuel cost forecast for this winter. So two things, that will change. One is the wholesale pricing. I showed you the market pricing chart. That can change. TVA's forecast will certainly change. The other variable that can change is the consumption. So individual customers will have more or less than 79 therms a month. They'll have more or less than the kilowatt hours on this chart. If we have a colder than normal winter, we would expect those numbers to go up. If we have a winter similar to last year, we would expect the average to hold about there. Weather predictions are not my expertise, but I will show you some history. If we look back over the past 10 years, you see on this chart we have two blue bars on 2014 and 2015 that are rather significant. So we have had two colder than warmer winters in the past 10 years. Anything that's like plus or minus 2 to 3%, we call that normal. And then we've also had, 3 to 4 winters that were very much warmer than normal. So if I'm using history as my gauge, I would say we have a 20% chance of the colder, and we have an 80% chance of normal to warmer. But obviously there are people who look forward and not just backwards. So we went and we looked at some of those sources as well. And TVA has a weather team, and TVA's team is predicting warmer than normal. The National Weather Service, NOAA, which is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, they do projections for the entire country as well as for the region. And so the National Weather Service is not as strong as TVA in their comments, but they lean towards warmer. Ironically, NOAA is their parent organization, and NOAA says normal, just flat out normal. And then there's one final source, and it's the one that my father always relied upon, and that's the Farmer's Almanac. And it, of course, says colder. So, so based on those, I would say there's a 75% to 80% chance that we'll be normal to warmer. So. Do we have the woolly worms? I do not do persimmon seeds or hornet's nests. Those are also methods that have been used in the past. But at this time, I'll be happy to take any additional questions you might have.
Thank you, Sherry. That was great.
Commissioners, we recently completed our United Way campaign at KUB that we do every fall, and I want to introduce Leslie Hartzell, our Director of Community Relations, to give you an update on our campaign this year. Before she begins, I want to recognize a special guest in the audience, Matt Ryerson, the CEO of United Way. He's here today, and I want to say how much we appreciate our partnership for many, many years, decades. United Way has been, being part of KUB's life, and your all's folks do a great job working with us every year. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a big part of our community and helping those in need. So Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Bolus. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here today, as Gabe mentioned, to give a brief overview and share a couple of highlights of our 2022 United Way campaign. But before I do that, I just want to echo what Gabe said. KUB's been a proud partner alongside United Way for more than 30-plus years. And our employees participating in United Way has become a tradition and is part of the culture of who we are here at KUB. And that's something that we're very proud of. One of the things that makes our campaign unique is that 100% of the funds raised is through employee contributions. There's no corporate match to go alongside that. And so our employees are very passionate about giving and supporting the community in a variety of ways, and you'll hear about some of those opportunities here. Our campaign is typically held each year in the months of September and October. It's a combination of fundraising events that we do along with agency awareness and education, in addition to community service. And I say all that to say, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on that, but none of it could happen without the group and the work of the committee that does all the planning and organizing behind the scenes. And listed to the right is a list of this year's United Way Employee Committee. I just want to say thank you to those employees, because it is truly an employee effort to pull off one of our United Way campaigns. As I mentioned, a big component is employee awareness and agency education. And one of the ways that we do this is through our agency tours. Our agency tours are traditionally set up for our newer employees to be able to go out and see firsthand what the agencies do and the services that they provide to our communities. We had to put agency tours on pause for a couple years due to the pandemic. And so we were really excited to be able to bring agency tours back to our campaign this year. And I'm happy to share with you that we had more than 100 employees go visit more than 10 agencies so that they could see and learn more about United Way and what they do. Since we couldn't get all of our employees on those agency tours, one of the newer things that our employees did, the committee did this year, was to bring an agency fair to KUB. This was another way that we could educate employees firsthand about what the agencies do, but also employees could learn about community service opportunities within those agencies. As you're well aware, that KUB has a vol time program where all of our employees receive 8 hours of vol time where they can give back to the community in some form or shape of their choice throughout the year. And so we wanted to be able to, since we couldn't take everybody on the tours, allow employees to continue to have the opportunity to see what's out there and to be able to have an opportunity to sign up and give back to those communities. We had 20 agencies on site, and it was a day filled with door prizes and a lot of opportunities that led into our next opportunity for our employees. One of the newer things that we have added to our United Way campaign, some of you may remember back in the day, United Way used to have a day of service, and it was kind of community-wide. Everybody kind of picked an organization and you went out to the community. Well, KUB and our employees kind of like to top that, and so we do a week of service here. And so during the week of service, employees can sign up and go out and just give their time and talents. This year, we had more than 143 employees contribute and volunteer more than 582 hours just in that week alone at more than 15 agencies. So our employees are not only giving financially to help support United Way, but they're giving of their time and their talents as well and giving back to the communities. This year, United Way of Greater Knoxville is celebrating their 100th anniversary, and so KUB, as Gabe mentioned, is a proud partner, and we've enjoyed celebrating this year and the many years alongside of them. Just to share a couple of stats with you all, our employees, through our employee fundraising and employee payroll deductions, we raised over $208,000 for this year's campaign alone. But since 2004, our employees have given more than $4 million to United Way, and I think that is something that we're very proud of, and you all should be proud as well. One of our core shared values is giving back and participating in the communities in which we serve. And the United Way campaign is just one of the many ways that our employees are allowed to do that. And so I'm excited to share this information with you. Before I close, I want to say that we had not had an in-person United Way campaign since 2019. And this was the first year for us to get back together, and our employees were extremely excited to be able to do the agency tours, to be able to have our special events, and just to be able to be back and see everybody and be able to have fun celebrating and raising funds and having an impact in our community. And before I close, I want to share a brief video with you where you will have an opportunity to hear firsthand from some of our employees about their thoughts and perspective about United Way. And so I will share this video.
KUB has been an active participant and partner with United Way for over 30 years. So my whole career, and then some, has been a big partner to that. Our folks have been very involved throughout the years with the community that we serve. It's very impactful. You know, it could be folks you know, it could be friends, and we know coworkers that have used those services. And so it's been part of our DNA for a long time. One thing that's unique about KUB is that 100% of the giving is from our employees. And therefore, there's lots of stories. You can talk to folks, you know, that have used United Way services and how much it means to them. And hearing those stories just reaffirms why it's so important that we help the community we live in.
Whenever I first started at KUB, I was able to go on some of the agency tours and see some of the organizations that actually receive United Way funds. And it was really rewarding to be able to see some of the work that they're doing out in the community. And for me, being able to just be a small part of that is super valuable.
Giving to United Way is a personal choice. I've been able to see firsthand how programs can support families when they're in need, no matter what their circumstance, from health and education. So it's definitely helped me and my family. One program in particular I can recall is my son participating in the swimming program at the YMCA. The funds that they get from the United Way campaigns annually help support teaching kids to be able to be safe around water. Luckily, after 2 years, my son was able to learn how to swim.
I've been giving to United Way as long as we've had United Way contributions, so I just always thought it was a great way to give back to the community. But then when I had this guy, it all became a lot different. There's so many people like Preston that are out there that want work, that want some job skills, that can't go get a minimum wage job just because they don't have the skills. So United Way provides a place for him to go, to be with people, to have a safe environment, and to learn job skills. I'm extremely proud of the fact that we do give back to United Way as we do. One thing I will ask everybody to do is still learn more about United Way if you don't know about it. There's lots of opportunities to see all the agencies that are involved. It's amazing what they touch and how they impact the community we serve.
Be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Leslie, thank you for your leadership in this. It's a terrific statement about our core values and fits right into the blueprint. And so we're very proud.
I just want to say I echo those comments, and send our thanks to the employees and folks who participated. This really is, you know, when you think about board service and you think about being affiliated with organizations, seeing this video and seeing what they do makes me extremely proud to be affiliated with and associated with KUB. So good job to the employees.
Excellent. And Matt, did you have, would you like to respond? While Matt's walking up, I want to take a moment of personal privilege and say I had the privilege of being on the search committee that selected and brought Matt to our community. And I will say that it's been I'm proud to tell people I was on that search committee because Matt has come into our city and has done more quickly than any of us could ever have imagined. And I would say that he is among the most impressive leaders I've ever known. And he is certainly the face of leadership in our community. And Matt, we are really proud to have you here in our meeting today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's very kind and generous. I need to take you home to have you say that to my family. I
feel you, brother.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to the commissioners for allowing us to do this. I want to thank Gabe for his leadership in this organization. And really highlight that we all know that outside the doors of this building, every day are people in need. You don't have to walk more than a few feet on your way in or out of this building or anywhere in our community to identify people that are in tough times. And when you highlight some of the struggles that this organization is facing, whether it's winter weather or rising rates, those people that we often come in contact with are feeling it even more. And it's really the contributions of an organization like this that make an incredible difference, especially when you see it in the spirit. And I think it's important to highlight, this is not corporate sponsored or incentivized by a match. That's not a part of what you can do. And yet these employees step up every year, year after year, give generously. And I just want to share with you all, and commissioners, you probably are aware of this, but from the leadership of Gabe and Leslie and the entire team that you saw up on the slide there are hundreds of employees that have an incredible spirit of service. From our darkest weather days out on the roads, helping us all be safe, to the contributions they make and the volunteer hours, which we did not highlight in detail, are extraordinary from this organization. You all have the privilege of sitting in this commission, overseeing an organization that has, as Gabe said, in their DNA, a spirit of service. And it's a real honor to be here and be a part of the great work of KUB and to be a partner organization and representing the nonprofit community, and even more importantly, all those that really are in need this season. Thank you. Thank you for your time and effort and your willingness to allow us to partner. And thank you to Leslie and her team for their extraordinary amount of work and volunteerism that goes back into our community. So thank you all. I'd be happy to take any questions, but I just came here to say thank you to the team here at KUB and commissioners, you as well.
How's the campaign going?
You know, it's actually, it is our 100-year anniversary. Our actual birthday is coming up on December 2nd. It'll be our actual 100-year date of formulation. And we were very concerned about the trends with inflation and how that would impact the community. But as is typical for East Tennessee and Knoxville, when people see a need, they step up. So we are actually, we were braced for a potential decline in those numbers. And right now, early indications, we're still in the early stages. But what we saw at KUB is what we're seeing community-wide is that we're seeing an increase across the board. And we're pretty excited what that could mean by the end of the year. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic.
Well, any other questions or comments? Thank you again, Matt, for your leadership. Incredible leadership in our community. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Gabe, we got.
What you also want to make sure in your portfolio, we have a new thing to show you. It's our annual report, but this year we also have our first ESG, which is known as Environment, Social, and Governance Report. So our first ever edition of that. It's very well done by our staff. It highlights all the things we're doing. You all are aware of a lot of them, but it kind of captures it in a couple documents. We'll also share this with you later on in an email with an attachment. I'll send it out to the city elected officials and county elected officials because it's a phenomenal report on what we're doing at KUB from just our business, obviously, but also from an environmental, social, and governance point of view. We will be growing this as we go on further, but it's pretty powerful when you start capturing all the things that are going on at KUB and the things we're doing just beyond just utility work, and how we capture that throughout our who we are. So I want to make sure you're all aware of that, and I want to give you a hard copy and an email later with the details.
Great. Could we make sure former Commissioner Worden gets a copy of the consolidated financials? Okay. Thank you, Gabe. This is terrific. I look forward to seeing this. The first report on environment, social, and governance is that's the first one we've ever done, right? So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Congratulations to the staff on putting that together. One announcement, I think some of you know, but the mayor selected Cynthia Gibson as the commissioner that she recommended to the city council, and the city council voted to approve her. So I'm very happy for all of you that you get to serve with new soon-to-be Commissioner Gibson, and I'm sure she's going to be a wonderful addition to the board. So all of you who helped influence that, thank you. So, I beg your pardon? No?
And she was wondering who rolls off, and I told her.
Oh, that's me. Yeah. Celebrations can come later. Okay. Are there any people here to speak to the board? Okay. Following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have lunch across the hall, and that session is open to the public to observe. Any other questions, comments, or business? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned.